Former President Barack Obama is sharply criticizing President Trump's economic policies and calling the Trump administration's moves targeting President Trump's political opponents unimaginable. President Obama also has a message for his fellow Democrats saying, and I'm quoting him now, "We're in one of those moments when you know what? It's not enough just to say you're for something. You may actually have to do something and possibly sacrifice a little bit," close quote. Former Vice President Kamala Harris is also weighing in, saying President Trump's actions have been largely predictable. Listen.
Each day in these last few months in our country, and it understandably creates a great sense of fear. Because, there were many things that we knew would happen. Many things. I'm not here to say I told you so.
She said, "I told you so." Joining us now, CNN political commentator and Democratic strategist Paul Begala. Paul, thanks for joining us. President Obama also called out the silence from Republicans about the economic turbulence here in the United States and President Trump's attacks on his perceived enemies. What do you make of what we heard from the former president and the former vice president?
Well, President Obama is probably the most popular politician around. I saw a Gallup poll earlier this year had him at 59%. Donald Trump never had a day in his whole life when he was at 59%. That's easier to be an ex-president. It is. And I think one of President Obama's great gifts in politics is timing. He's not out there in your face every day. He's the way Trump has to be. He's the president, okay? But he picks his moments and he knows what he is doing. He's the best sense of timing I've seen anybody since Ronald Reagan. And he is connecting right now. And it is both these grocery store issues, these cost of living issues, which is the most important. That's what's driving everything now. But also these more existential issues about our freedom. When you see people taken, handcuffed, and shipped to some hellhole in a prison in El Salvador without any due process, I'm glad Barack Obama is speaking out. I will also note, so is Joe Rogan. So if Donald Trump, okay, he's losing Barack Obama, he's also losing Joe Rogan, a very popular podcaster that Mr. Trump went on his show. Because Americans don't like that kind of lack of due process, and they sure don't like the costs going up at the grocery store the way they are.
A recent poll shows just 63% of Democrats view the party favorably right now. That's down from 81% at the start of the Biden administration. But according to Ron Brownstein, the columnist and good friend, these image problems might not matter much coming up in the 2026 midterm elections. He writes this. He writes that Democrats' best chance to recover would rely on their ability to, quote, crystallize public discontent with the actions by President Trump and the Republican-controlled Congress. You think he's right about that?
It pains me to say this because I love the guy. Brownstein's always right, and he's right about this. Right now, by the way, I don't know how the Democratic favorable among Democrats is 63. I mean, we've known each other a long time. I've been a Democrat all my adult life. I wouldn't have a favorable opinion of my party right now. So, and yet the Democrats are winning. Stunning win in Wisconsin this week, where Ben Wickler, the state party chair, led his party to a really stunning, at the highest turnout I've seen in one of these Supreme Court elections. And so he's done a terrific job of coalescing that anger. The thing is, rage, which Democrats feel, is a wonderful motivator. It is. And so the Democrats are really angry. And by the way, that anger is spreading now. It's not just, we're watching the stock market. It's not just the stock market, it's also the supermarket. It's groceries, gas, and rent. Americans who hired Donald Trump, the ones in the middle, not the hardcore MAGA, and we love them, but they don't move around a lot. The people who moved and put Trump in, they put him in because the cost of living was too high. And he is raising the cost of their groceries, gas, and rent. I think Chris Van Hollen, who you interviewed earlier on this broadcast, has the right message for Democrats, which is the great betrayal. Donald Trump won the voters who make less than $50,000 a year. That breaks my heart as a Democrat, but I admire it as a strategist. He won the heart of the working class, and now he's stabbing them in the back with higher costs on everything that they eat, drink, wear, drive. He's hurting the very people who put him into office, and that is bad politics as well as bad economic policy.
Always good to get your analysis, Paul. Thank you very, very much, Paul Begala.
Thanks, Wolf. Great to see you again.
I think that politicians that don't pay attention to what people are saying are going to find themselves out of work, which is as it should be. The people are going to rise up and going to tell the politicians, finally.
Okay, you might think that was from a recent town hall or protest. Actually, that is a Tea Party protester from 2010. That movement, which was largely motivated by anger at what they saw was as an overreaching federal government under the control of a single party. That might sound familiar. A new op-ed from pollster and friend of the show, Kristen Soltis Anderson, has this warning for her party: Republicans better watch out. And she cites her latest poll, which found the emotion Democrats are most feeling right now is fury.
We are not interested in hearing that you are in the minority. We know that. We want you to show some of the backbone and strategic brilliance that Mitch McConnell would have in the minority.
Group chat is back. Jackie, we've talked a lot about this analogy, Tea Party to now. Obviously, Democrats have talked about how much they believe is at stake, especially with the actions that the administration is taking around immigration. What are you going to be listening for in A, these protests, B, how Democrats respond to them?
You know, I'm not listening to Democrats as much as I'm watching the voters that voted for Trump because of the economy. We talk to them all the time during the last election, those who were saying, it's not my favorite, but I'm voting for him because of inflation and because my grocery bill is too high. Yes, Democratic enthusiasm obviously is a huge deal. We saw that in Wisconsin, but I think those voters who are on the margins are going to be the ones that really tip the scales as we go forward. I mean, it's a long time before.
Yeah, but I guess the question is, can the scales be tipped if you're looking on the news that there's protests, if you're hearing your neighbor complain about it? Rob?
Yeah, I mean, I remember that moment, and I know Jim does as well, in 2009 and 2010, when there was a lot of enthusiasm and anger on the right, particularly with the Tea Party protests. And so I think that it would be wise for Republicans to look at the election results, not only in Wisconsin, but those two races in Florida that you talked about earlier, Audie, because the margins were much smaller. I mean, 14 points is still a big margin. At the same time, I think it's important to look at those lessons. You have the Virginia gubernatorial election this year, which will be another bellwether, and then you have some other special elections in the House that are going to come up as well.
Yeah, but people hit the streets when they don't feel heard in elections, right? I want to play some sound from you in context of this conversation around the Democratic Party kind of searching for a leader.
Fear has a way of being contagious. Okay? When one person has fear, it has a way of spreading to those around them and spreading. And we are witnessing that, no doubt. But I say this also, my dear friends, courage is also contagious.
Okay, Kamala Harris, we finally see her, and she is referring to something that is real, as I've reported on college campuses, for example, that people are afraid of sticking their neck out, going public because of the potential backlash to that activity. Jim, can you talk about this message in the context of, people speaking out?
Well, it goes back to what you were just saying. I think you're exactly right about these swing voters. And swing voters don't want to hear Democrats talk about anger and fear and all these things. They want us to have an economic message that makes their lives better. And Democrats have still yet to settle behind that. Part of it's not having a leader, but part of it's like understanding the moment we're in. It's not just enough to win elections because people start hating Elon Musk and Donald Trump. You actually have to have a different vision. And I think that's the challenge Democrats have right now. And that's the work we have to do. And it's not just enough to talk about fear.
Your old boss went a little further than this. He was speaking at Hamilton College. He had this to say about the moment that Democrats are in. He was saying we're in one of those moments when, it's not enough to say that you're for something. You may actually have to do something and possibly sacrifice a little bit. That's the part people don't remember when they talk about protests or where they refer to the 60s or refer to past time. People did sacrifice.
That's right. People went to jail. People like took very difficult things, and I think what he's talking about is these law firms who are just bowing to the president, to Trump, and not fighting back. There's a price to be paid here, and you had Indivisible on earlier. They're willing to pay that price to say this is the moment to have that fight. I just think it's not just about anger, though. You've got to have a message how you're making these swing voters' lives better. In the Wisconsin election, 9 counties that went for Donald Trump went for the Democrat in that election. Those swing voters moving. It's not just enthusiasm. Swing voters are beginning to panic about Donald Trump.
Rob, last word to you.
Yeah, I think that it's wise, again, for Republicans to pay close attention to this. Donald Trump did have a message that resonated in the 2024 election. He was able to win over those people who may have voted for Joe Biden in the previous election. And
He also rode anti-pandemic lockdown protest anger.
Sure he did. Yeah, so did Glenn Youngkin in Virginia,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, that's again why I say look at what's going to happen in Virginia as the next bellwether, just like Bob McDonnell's victory in the early days of Barack Obama's presidency.